Welcome to the Luigi's Mansion Iceberg. Thanks to Matos Schmilmore and all these other people for making the iceberg. Tier 1. Luigi's Mansion Beta. The beta for Luigi's Mansion felt like almost an entirely different game. A lot of entries on this list that are yellow are either from the beta or unused assets, but the beta is very different and there's a lot of content that ended up getting scrapped and, well, would have been quite a bit scarier. Beta game over screen. If you ended up dying in normal Luigi's Mansion, you'd get a pretty standard game over screen. It just says good night as Luigi falls over. But the beta one zooms out of the mansion and has Luigi make an oddly scary face before fading to black. His eyes even go fully white. It doesn't even say game over or anything, it just fades to black. Hanging Luigi shadow. When exploring through the attic, lightning will flash occasionally and a shadow will appear, and with the placement of the shadow, it really makes it look like Luigi's hanging from the ceiling. This caused some kids to obviously get scared and a lot of creepypastas were made from it. Basically, this was getting popular for being an out-of-nowhere, extremely violent sort of jump scare that Nintendo just threw in there. But it turns out this was just a glitch. In Luigi's Mansion, shadows are displayed based off the camera angle, and since this one area in the attic is lower to the ground, with the roof being right above Luigi, the shadow is a bit displaced and it makes it look extremely violent with where the shadow lands. Space World 2000 build. Just like with Pokemon and many other Nintendo games, Space World had a lot of early footage of these games that became massively popular for a lot of features never making it into their main games. Like with Luigi's Mansion, there's a lot of footage of it, and a lot of the features in this build never made it to the main game. Space World 2000 specifically had a lot with Luigi's Mansion. You can even see the previously mentioned beta game over screen from this. A lot of the designs from the specific build shown at Space World completely changed, and there still hasn't been any versions of this build found. It's a completely lost early build of the game, and it would have been amazing to see. I wouldn't be shocked if someday, whenever Nintendo has another leak, that we may end up finally getting a version of this build to run. Speaking of cut things from the Space World demo, the Basher Ghost is one of these. The only footage of the Basher Ghost is really bad quality, but luckily some of the animations for the ghost were found. The Bashers used the same model as the Gold Ghost, but acted a lot differently. A Basher would sneak up behind Luigi, invisible until close enough, and once it was close enough, a big puff of blue smoke would appear, soon followed by the ghost saying "Bah," causing Luigi to scream and crawl backwards uncontrollably, and have his health cut down to 50. After a few seconds, his health would come back to what he had before taking any damage. The Game Boy Horror's purpose at the time of this ghost development seems to have been for this specific ghost, as it would indicate when a Basher is nearby in the same way that it detects boos in the final game. In order to capture a Basher, Luigi would have to wait until the Game Boy Horror flashed red, then stun the ghost with his flashlight as soon as it appeared. The Basher only had 5 HP, so he was most likely going to be one of the hallway ghosts, kind of like the bowling ghosts and ceiling surprise ghosts. Beating the game in under 20 minutes glitch run. Luigi's Mansion isn't necessarily known for being a glitchy game, since a lot of the glitches you have to try pretty hard to trigger, but if you know how to do them, the game ends up being a mess. It's not too hard to get to the end of the game within 30 minutes. Through using certain glitches, you can clip out of most of the game and just skip the final fight. There's a whole guide on how to do it if you want to try, it'll be in the description, but speedrunning of this game with these glitches is just insane. 3DS Remake. In the March 2018 Nintendo Direct, Nintendo revealed a remake of Luigi's Mansion. They also revealed a new design gallery and boss rush mode. Then 6 months later, in another Direct, they revealed the remake was going to have amiibo support and a 2-player co-op mode. This remake was super well done. Aside from looking better, having 2 screens just means you can have a map on the bottom half, which is just super helpful. And the original Luigi's Mansion was planned to have full stereoscopic 3D. You know, the kind where you can wear the glasses, or if you have a super expensive TV, just displayed in 3D. But those TVs weren't too popular back then, and with how much it cost, the 3D for the GameCube version of the game got cut. But the 3DS could do this. So out of all the games on the 3DS that has 3D, this one really feels like it's designed for it, because it was, sort of. I know the 3D on the 3DS is kind of iffy and usually doesn't fit in with games. For this remake, it really does. Also, most of the rooms and, well, parts of the game got a full makeover with this remake. Like the Safari room just looks infinitely better. The only downside is that since the assets are newer, they kinda went a different route, making it more colorful and modern than dark and old, but it doesn't take away a whole lot. The remake's for sure worth playing. Just unfortunate they released it at the time they did. I mean, the Switch was already out, so this game really didn't get the attention it deserved. Other references to Luigi's Mansion / Mario Kart maps. Luigi's Mansion has been referenced in a lot of other pieces of media, obviously being Nintendo pieces of media, but there's a lot. So in this entry, I'll be covering all the Mario Kart maps since there are references to Luigi's Mansion, but there's a lot of references to Luigi's Mansion, and if I went through all of them in depth, this video would be like 3 hours long. So I will quickly go through these, and don't worry, a lot of these I'll talk about later on. They relate to later entries. So for references to Luigi's Mansion, there's Vacuum Luigi being a trophy in Smash Melee, EGAD being referenced in Mario Sunshine by one of his inventions, a Pianta in Mario Sunshine saying why can't someone just come along and suck him up with a vacuum, the Gadlight item being in Mario Party 4 made by EGAD, Luigi's Final in Smash, a cleaned up mansion being in a Mario Kart Double Dash map in the distance, also being a playable battle mode map in the same game. You can get the Game Boy Horror from EGAD in Mario and Luigi Superstars Saga, Luigi's Mansion being a map in Mario Power Tennis, in Super Mario 64 DS, there's a minigame where you have to find booze in a mansion playing as Luigi. A Luigi's Mansion themed board being in Mario Party 6, EGAD shows up in Mario Party Advance, Luigi's Mansion being a course in Mario Kart DS, my first experience with the Luigi's Mansion personally. In the same Mario Kart game, there's a poltergust cart with a big vacuum. EGAD shows up again in Mario and Luigi Partners in Time, there's a Luigi's Mansion court in Mario Hoops 3-on-3. In Super Paper Mario, there's a Mansion Patrol minigame that's in the mansion, and the minigame Spectre Inspector in Mario Party 8 has ghosts from Luigi's Mansion. Mario Galaxy's got a mansion level that looks exactly like Luigi's Mansion. The mansion's a stage in Smash Brawl. In Mario Super Sluggers, there's a Luigi's Mansion park you can play on. There's a mansion basketball court in Mario Sports Mix. In the same game, there's a volleyball court in the mansion. Luigi's Mansion has a course in Mario Kart 7. Mario Party 9 has a Luigi's Mansion inspired board. There's a Luigi's Mansion puzzle on Street Pass, a stage in Smash Bros. For the Wii U. Luigi's special move in the same Smash is from Luigi's Mansion. The Twisted Mansion course in Mario Kart 8 is inspired directly off of Luigi's Mansion and shares some of the same music. Luigi's Amiibo board in Mario Party 10 is based off Luigi's Mansion. There's an EGAD costume in the first Mario Maker. There's levels inspired off Luigi's Mansion in Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge. Mario Kart 8's got a Luigi's Mansion battle mode map. In Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, there's a poltergust weapon. In the trailer for Smash Ultimate, Luigi uses a poltergust. Luigi's Smash in Smash Ultimate is straight from Luigi's Mansion. The previously mentioned Smash stage that was a mansion returns in Smash Ultimate. And yeah, those are the 25 games referencing Luigi's Mansion. I know you probably didn't get any of what I just said, but a lot of them I'll talk about more in depth in future entries. But yeah, clearly Luigi's Mansion is a very big part of Nintendo and constantly gets referenced in other games. Safari Ghost. The Safari Ghost is talked about a lot amongst Luigi's Mansion fans. Ever since its release in 2001, people have been convinced there is a Safari Ghost in the Safari Room, or some type of hunter ghost, that even if it's not in the game, that it was planned at some point. And while most evidence of this ghost being a thing is unreliable and it's just my friend said he saw it, the main thing leading people to believe that this ghost was real, or at least planned, was in this segment of Nintendo Power magazine in October of 2001, where in a part of it showing the Safari Room, it states, "When your ghoul-busting mission takes you to the trophy room, proceed with caution. If you meet up with the ghost of a hunter, he'll want to add Luigi to his collection." Okay, so yeah, this means the ghost has gotta exist, or at least maybe it was in the beta or planned, but no. The magazine came out a month after the Japanese release of the game, and this was just flavor text. This Safari or Hunter ghost never existed and was just made up by multiple fans over time, most likely just misremembering a part of the game, having a dream about it, or just trying to mess around. The ghost that people thought was in development was also probably too violent for Nintendo. A lot of the remarks about the non-existent ghost state that he'd talk about putting Luigi on his wall alongside his taxidermy, and I think that's just a little bit too far for what Nintendo usually allows in their games. Hidden menu messages. In the menu for Luigi's Mansion, there's multiple hidden messages that can be seen. Like when you go to start playing a save, it'll fade in and out text that says, "Welcome to your mansion," but one letter fades faster than the rest. And if you pause it at just the right time, yeah, the Y fades out faster and it says, "Welcome to our mansion." Also, when you go to delete a save, it says, "You can erase the files" as a subtext, but then fades to, "but not the fear." Even when you go to quit to the menu, there's text that changes from "you'll be back" to "and we'll be waiting." And this one isn't a message, but it's hidden somewhere you wouldn't expect. When in the training room, viewing the controls of the game, you'll hear pretty standard music. Just a short little melody repeating in the background. But when reviewing the controls here, if you stay on this page for a little under 3 minutes, the music will change. You'll hear a strange sound, then the music completely switches up. And this change is really neat. Sounds a lot cooler and eventually goes back to normal. But there's a strange sequence of notes you can hear in the music. Well, that is Tataka's song. A song that's worked into every game Kazumi Tataka works on. And this little song's been in a lot. Animal Crossing, Smash, even the Wii Shop. This has been in a lot of different parts of Nintendo, and it's usually super hard to realize when you're listening to other work Tataka's done. Hidden rooms. How could you make a game set in a mansion without hidden rooms? Exactly. There's 2 hidden rooms in the first Luigi's Mansion. The first one, you have to aim the Game Boy Horror at a small hole at the bottom of this wall, and you'll get sucked into a treasure room. And the second, you need to fall down the chimney at the top of the mansion, and you'll find yourself in another room full of treasures. Watering plants and watering the big flower. Watering plants can be a pretty big part of Luigi's Mansion. It's used to solve multiple puzzles and get one of the gems. To get this gem, the golden diamond, you have to water this big flower from seedling all the way through to flower. And right before it turns into a flower, watering it for the last time, it'll spit out the golden diamond that's worth 4,000 coins. Poltergust overheating. The Poltergust, Luigi's vacuum for ghosts, aside from originally being named the Poltergust 400 instead of 3000, also looked a lot more boxy when it was originally shown off. The main difference, aside from appearance that I think everyone's glad they got rid of, is the overheating feature. In the beta for Luigi's Mansion, the Poltergust would be able to overheat and explode, damaging Luigi if he used it too much. It seems some way through development, they decided to use this for the elements, like water, ice, and fire that you can use later on, but completely scrapped it for the normal vacuum. You're just using it way too much and it'd be super annoying. E3 timer. The demo of Luigi's Mansion had a timer of 20 minutes that you could play, which was about an hour and a half in Luigi's Mansion time. Not too much on this entry. It was just a limited time to play, and this whole clock got scrapped before the final release. Falling chandelier. If you stand in the center of the main hall of the mansion, the chandelier right above you will fall. Every time. But it falls because of a ghost named Chauncey, meaning when you defeat this ghost later on in the game, the chandelier no longer falls. It's just a nice little feature that changes. Seeing something even minor in a game world change because of an action you did just feels really satisfying. Speedy spirits. Speedy spirits are different from other ghosts in Luigi's Mansion. Instead of attacking Luigi, they instead hide from him, and if found, run away. They're pretty much collectibles, so you can just get them with a poltergust and get coins from them. Golden mice are also similar to the speedy spirits. They also run away, and once collected, they can drop coins, stones, and sometimes even collectibles. Space World 2001 build. When talking about the beta of Luigi's Mansion, it's most likely a mix of 2 builds. The build shown at Space World 2000 and the build shown at Space World 2001. Both are pretty similar. Obviously, the 2001 build is a lot closer to what we got on final release, but both builds are still lost. Looking at the differences between them is really cool. It's just unfortunate that there's no way to play them. Luigi's Mansion Lego set. In recent years, Nintendo finally started doing collaborations with Lego, having multiple Mario sets, and as of the first day of 2022, January 1st, having Luigi's Mansion sets too. There's been 3 sets so far: the Lab and Poltergust expansion set, the Entryway expansion set, and the Haunt and Seek set. These sets obviously aren't what you'd expect when you think Lego. Normally Lego sets are one big building, but these and the Mario sets, they decided to make them more interactable, with each part having multiple moving parts and things you can easily swap around and use. Unfortunately, these are now discontinued, but you can still buy the Mario sets. Boo puns. While wandering through the mansion, when entering the storage room, Luigi accidentally releases 50 boos, and all of these boos have names. Pun names. I won't make you suffer by having to hear them all, but none of them are good. They're like dad joke humor. Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh is a portrait ghost. He's a painter who has the ability to bring paintings to life, and is the one responsible for creating all of the normal ghosts throughout the mansion. He ends up being the boss of Area 4, the attic in the mansion, and is the last ghost fought before fighting King Boo. The mansion is an illusion. The ending of Luigi's Mansion has Luigi returning to Egad's laboratory, and he's informed that the mansion has ceased to exist, due to it being an illusion, and they turned King Boo into a painting alongside with the last recaptured ghost. And not a part of this entry, but in the epilogue, as a sign of gratitude towards Luigi for all his help, Egad has a new non-haunted house built for him on the former site of the mansion, with its size determined by the amount of treasure collected during the game, that ranges from a small little shack or tent to a brand new mansion. Boarded up doors in the beta. The beta of Luigi's Mansion had a lot of boarded up doors to keep players from exploring everything and trying to get to unfinished locations. I couldn't find any footage of this, just mentions online, but some of the boarded up doors remained. Just with these doors, they were the hidden treasure rooms that you'd have to access in different ways. Beta ghost designs. Like I said before, there was some ghost cut from the beta of the game, like the Basher ghost, but there's also these two ghosts we don't even have names for. They were in the trailer for the Space World builds and were never given a name or fleshed out at all. There's also early versions of the other ghosts from the beta, like this is what the blue twirler ghost originally looked like, and this is what the purple puncher ghost originally looked like. Both of these ghost color palettes completely changed, and it was for sure for the better. Also, the purple puncher ghost is what I set my online college profile to. Beta gaming HUD. The HUD of Luigi's Mansion was a lot different in the beta. Instead of just the health and Game Boy Horror, you can see in this image that there was a beta timer, the health looked normal, a coin count that would normally just be the Game Boy, and an overheat meter for the Poltergust. It's mainly just mechanics that got scrapped and were removed, but I'm glad they changed it. Having that much on screen just looks like a mess. Painting rankings. Like I mentioned earlier, based on how much coins you got when completing the game, you'd get a different mansion in the end. It ranges from ratings H through A, and on the 3DS there's an exclusive S rating you can get, for getting over 130 million gold. Toad was sent by Peach. The story of Luigi's Mansion, at least in the start, is that Luigi won a contest for the brand new mansion, but he never entered it. Mario and him both went to check it out, and Mario got to the mansion first and went missing. And some Toads were later sent by Peach because she was worried that they were walking into danger. When talking to one of the Toads in the foyer, they're scared and unable to do anything. So once Luigi helps out, he explains that they were in the mansion and begged Luigi, saying Peach will flip out if she finds out Mario was captured. Peach herself is never seen in the game, but later on in the franchise, in the third game, she's seen joining Mario and Luigi going to the new mansion. Tier 2. PAL Region's Hidden Mansion. The Hidden Mansion is a game mode that has harder ghosts, the Poltergust is 2 times as powerful, and you earn more money in this mode, but Luigi takes double damage. So you basically play as a glass cannon. The Hidden Mansion is playable just after one playthrough of the game, and this mode is already super unique and fun, but the PAL version of the game, if you don't know, PAL is sort of a standard in Europe and Asia, and then in America we have NTSC games. It's a weird thing with refresh rate, but the PAL versions actually got something exclusive with this. In PAL versions of Luigi's Mansion, the Hidden Mansion mode is made more unique. Instead of the normal just mansion is harder, it's also a mirrored version of the mansion. So everything that was on the left half is now on the right, and vice versa. Not many games really have any differences for the PAL versions, and if they do, they're most likely not nearly as unique as this one's. Chef Ghost. This is the one screenshot of the Chef Ghost that was in the beta of Luigi's Mansion. It's just a ghost in the kitchen holding a tomato, so normally this would be all we know, just that it was a unique ghost and that's it. But there's a modding team that's been remaking Luigi's Mansion with as much stuff from the beta reconstructed as possible, and when asked about this ghost specifically, one of the members of the team said, quote, "We know that he uses a tomato in his attack due to the tomato model still being present in the game. He throws a tomato like a bowling ball ghost throws a bowling ball." End quote. And the model for the bowling ball in the game is named Tomato in the game's files. So yeah, we totally just missed out on a cool ghost design and a new type of attack. Sure, it'd be probably even the same animation as a bowling ball ghost, but it'd be a tomato. Out of all things that were in the beta that I wish they kept in, this one's for sure at least in my top 3. Hey Luigi, what's the holdup? When entering the well in the garden outside of the mansion, it's really hard to hear and most people won't even recognize anything was said, but you can hear Mario say, "Hey Luigi, what's the holdup?" I'll play the clip for you. If you didn't have your audio near max while playing this alone, I doubt most people would ever have noticed this. Astral Hall looping. The Astral Hall room is very unique. At first it looks like a normal dark room with some unlit candles in the middle. You get coins from the drawers on both sides of the room and go to the right? Well, when you try to, you will loop the room, coming out of the left door again. Well, you need to light these candles, and once you do, stand in the center of the room, and the candles turn purple and ghosts appear that you have to fight. Then everything goes all normal, all bright, and you can go to the right finally. It's one of the most unique rooms in the game, and I'm sure some people just totally skip this, just not realizing what to do. Rank A mansion in Luigi Circuit. Like previously mentioned, Luigi's Mansion was shown off in Mario Kart Double Dash, specifically the A rank mansion. Obviously, they couldn't have the S rank from the remake, but this one's still really nice. Also, to save on storage and performance, it's hardly modeled at all. If you go around the back of it, yeah, it's just see-through. Ghosts playing cards. At Space World 2007, there was a scene of some ghosts playing cards, and we even have some footage of it, but this unfortunately got cut from the game. I would say this is because it looked like gambling, but it was 2000 and they didn't care as much back then, so I legitimately have no clue why this was cut from the game. Unused dialogue icons. In the beta for Luigi's Mansion, there was a lot of dialogue icons that got cut, showing that you'd be able to talk to these characters. And the ones that got cut were for Bowser, Mario, a gold ghost, Green Toad, a character that wasn't even in the full game, and Nana the Ghost. Unused ending rank emotes. Left over in the files of the final release of the game are these pictures of Luigi we can only assume is reacting to the ending grade of your save. This is the best possible ending reaction, just holding two peace signs up. The overall good reaction is normal, just normal single peace signs. But the worst ending reaction, Luigi just looks depressed. This reaction looks a lot like the game over screen in the beta and was probably cut alongside that. Elemental Blast. Once you recover an elemental metal, Luigi is then able to use that element of the metal, it can be fire, water, or even ice, to fire out from the poltergust. You use a lot of the elements for puzzles in the game, and it just makes the poltergust so much better. Having the ability to light candles or water plants opens up a lot more things you can do in the mansion. Burning down fake doors. Speaking of the uses of these elements, one of the harder ones to notice is burning down these fake doors. Sometimes there's doors scattered around in rooms, and they're just illusions by ghosts, some of them even attacking you if you try to enter them, so you can burn them down with a fire metal. Mario Storybook. At several points throughout Luigi's Mansion, you can see a book titled Mario's Story. Most people talk about this image of it, where it's being read by the first portrait ghost you fight, Neville. A big fan theory spawned from this, being that possibly the events of Paper Mario take place in this book, and the Japanese name for Paper Mario literally translates to Mario's Story, the name of the book. Even if it's not, say, canon, it's at least hinted to a lot. Pikmin trailer. On the bonus disc for Luigi's Mansion is a trailer for Pikmin. Not a lot to this entry, but it was kind of cool getting to see a new game coming out while playing a different one. They've pretty much stopped altogether in putting these types of trailers in games. Luigi's Mansion lasts one night. The story of Luigi's Mansion takes place over one night. Some people state that the gameplay takes more than just a night, which, well, isn't fully true. You can beat the game in around 6 to 7 hours, and if the game starts at, say, 8 p.m., it would then end at 4 or 5 before the sun comes out, so it does kind of work out. Plus, it's a game, so it doesn't really matter how much real time you spend in it compared to the in-game time. But yeah, the whole game takes place within a night. Beta restoration. Have you ever wanted to play the Luigi's Mansion beta? Or, as of hearing about it now, you want to? Well, you sort of can. We don't have an official build from Space World, but a team of modders have remade pretty much everything from the beta that is in the old footage that's still online, and made a mod for it. At least, you know, they did all they could. There is limited footage, so it's not 100% accurate to the Space World 2000 or 2001 builds of the game, but if you've heard of a feature from the beta of the game, it's in this. It's by far one of the most interesting modding projects I've ever seen, and by far the biggest mod for Luigi's Mansion fans. The link for it, if you want to try it out, is in the description. I highly recommend it. Luigi's Mansion Official Guidebook. Releasing alongside the game, there was an official Luigi's Mansion guidebook. It's pretty big, about 100 pages, and they're not too expensive nowadays, but yeah, pretty much every game that released back in the early 2000s had a guidebook, but this one's cooler because it's Luigi's Mansion. Readable books. There's 7 readable books in Luigi's Mansion, these being the Book of Pericles, Book of Riddles, Darkness in Their Cheese, Egad's Guide to Ghosts, Lydia's Child Care Diary, Neville's Big Baby Care Diary, and lastly, Egad's Research Journal. These books give you hints at how to solve puzzles that are in the game, and most of them are found in the study. 6 of the 7 are. Elemental Blast. With the elemental medallions, you can normally use an element like fire, water, or ice, and it's just shooting out the element normally. But if you press the fire button all the way, you can do an elemental blast. Say with the fire medallion, it normally spits out fire, pretty generically like a flamethrower, but if you press it down all the way, it turns into a fireball. Beta Gallery. The gallery is already a big part of Luigi's Mansion, having all the portraits for the portrait ghost that are super important in progressing the game. The beta version of the gallery was much bigger though, meaning that there was most likely a lot more of these portrait ghosts planned out for the game, but they were cut before release. Luigi's Mansion 64 mod. There's a mod for Luigi's Mansion, or I guess Mario 64? A mod for Mario 64 that recreates Luigi's Mansion inside of it. It still uses the same levels as Mario 64, but obviously changed drastically. This mod has a similar level of popularity as the beta restoration mod, and it's really impressive. Most mechanics of the game were completely redone, and the levels look really good. It's pretty much just what Luigi's Mansion would have looked like if it was released on the N64. Luigi's Mansion originally supported 3D. Like I mentioned earlier, Luigi's Mansion was originally going to have 3D support, but it would have cost too much in development, and the actual number of people who would have been able to use it just was so low it wasn't worth it. At least on the 3DS version of the game you could use 3D, but it would have been a lot cooler to have on GameCube. Teleporting mirrors. Fast travel wasn't really a thing in Nintendo games until kind of recently. Not many games had big enough maps for it to matter, so how do you travel around the mansion without losing your mind retracing all these steps and going through all these doors? Well, if you point the Game Boy Horror camera into a mirror, it'll teleport Luigi back to the foyer, the start of the mansion. Without this feature, the game would take a lot longer to play and just be a lot more annoying. Super Mario 64 sound sample. There were a few lines of dialogue by Luigi that got cut prior to release, but remain in the files. One of these being when he says ow, being bit by Spooky the dog. This audio was actually used in the trailer for the 3DS remake of the game, but was never in the remake. It was, however, used in the DS version of Mario 64. If you didn't know, you can play as Mario, Luigi, Wario, and Yoshi in the DS version of Mario 64. But yeah, it's weird that this bit of audio was only ever used in the DS version of Mario 64. The crows. The crows were first shown off in Luigi's Mansion 1. You'd think crows would be in any other Nintendo game before 2001, but no. The closest thing we have was the crow, with a K, in Donkey Kong Country 2. But yeah, the crows spelled normally were first introduced in Luigi's Mansion. Technically, they appeared in Mario Picross 6 years prior, but watching gameplay of the level that they supposedly appear in, I just couldn't spot them at all. But yeah, in Luigi's Mansion, they had super low health and still did damage to you, so they were kind of annoying to get rid of, but they looked really cool and fit the theme of Luigi's Mansion. Beta Mansion concepts. The initial development for Luigi's Mansion wasn't even with Luigi. At first, it was going to be in a dollhouse with some desert levels and would star Mario. That got scrapped pretty fast, but an apartment and quote ninja mansion, I don't know what that would have looked like, were also planned. It would have been cool to see what these would have looked like, maybe in concept art, but I'm glad they went with a spooky mansion instead of these. Amiibo support in the remake. The 3DS remake of Luigi's Mansion had amiibo support, and some of the amiibos were really good. There were 4 that worked, being Luigi, Toad, Boo, and Mario. Luigi would have given you a chance to revive when you ran out of health, and furniture hiding a speedy spirit would light up. Toads would have made talking to a toad in the game restore health. The Boo amiibo would show on the map 3 hidden locations of Boos. And lastly, the Mario amiibo would make it so mushrooms you find will be health restoring super mushrooms instead of poison mushrooms. Ghost biographies. Every portrait ghost you fight has a biography, telling you what they were like in the afterlife. And most of them are pretty tame. They're just living a normal life in the afterlife, and only become mean when they see you. Boo looking at you in the pause menu. When you pause Luigi's Mansion, you can see a spooky little Easter egg the developers decided to throw in. If you look at the Boo here at the top, he'll occasionally glance at you. Not anything super scary, but it'd for sure catch you off guard if you were just checking out the pause screen. Tier 3, L. L, or ELH, is a unused beta model in Luigi's Mansion. Some say that L was an unused boss in the game that you'd have to defeat with the elements, but it hasn't been confirmed. According to the game's files, it was made a month after E3 and has 6 animations. All can be put in the game if you use something like Action Replay to replace Toad with him, but it's obviously not gonna fully work like intended. The name L is also more or less a fan name, just based off the file name of the model, that's elh.szp. This character's attack would have involved crossing its arms and smashing the floor, and their normal idle state would have just been to stare at Luigi with their arms outstretched. This character also has an appearing animation involving them rising from a crunch state, implying that it would have been able to manifest itself before the battle. It also appears to have what translates to a standby animation that's most likely played while it's just waiting for Luigi to attack. This character was an elemental of sorts, being able to make certain elements appear in the fight. They had 2 animations for both ice and fire, one involving making a body of ice or fire appear, and another appearing to be a stream of circular particles. This is one of the most iconic unused creatures in a game, and I already covered it in another video of mine a few months ago, still no new information on it. Some people believe it could have been an early version of the Bogmire enemy, but there's no for sure answer and the devs have never even mentioned him. Map 0. Map 0 is a playable map in Luigi's Mansion with Action Replay, so it's fully in the files, you just need to cheat to get in. But this map's super interesting. It's similar to the full game, but most of the map just doesn't exist. When you go up the staircase here, there isn't a second floor and you can phase directly through the door at the bottom. There's just a ton of weird unused parts in the game that were left over, and it's super cool getting to see what a beta mansion might have looked like. A lot of the stuff in this though is just kind of buggy and doesn't really work. Bowser is dead theory. At the end of Paper Mario 64, Bowser is defeated. Not by lava like other games. No, he was exploded and fell miles and miles down. In the game, on a sign, it stated that Bowser was badly beaten and will likely never return. We're sure of it. Almost positive. Obviously, it's a Mario game, so he'll most likely return, and this was more him just being injured. But in Luigi's Mansion, when showing the fortune teller Mario's items that were left around the mansion, upon examining the last of the objects, she states, "How can this be? I see the hideous form of Bowser. Is Bowser somewhere in the mansion? I can't believe it, and yet I see it. I thought Mario had soundly defeated Bowser. Has King Boo somehow revived Bowser? This could be horrible. Well, for you." This shows that, at least for a time, Bowser was dead. Luigi's Mansion is the next Mario game in the series after Paper Mario 64, and there's multiple connections between the games, making Luigi's Mansion pretty much a direct sequel to Paper Mario. In Paper Mario, in Luigi's home, there's a diary written by Luigi himself, talking about how he wishes he could have his own adventure, hinting to Luigi's Mansion. And previously mentioned, the book that Neville was reading translates to Mario's Story, the Japanese name of Paper Mario. And this shows why King Boo was using a fake Bowser in the final fight of Luigi's Mansion. So is King Boo just pretending to be Bowser? Pretending to be a King Koopa instead of King Boo? I mean, even in Mario 64, Bowser's laugh is just a slowed version of King Boo's. Most likely this is just digging way too deep, but a lot of it does make sense. At the end of the day, it's Nintendo, so even if it is correct, I doubt they'd ever say it. I mean, Bowser's been in a lot of games after this one, so it's either Bowser died in Paper Mario and was resurrected to be used as a fake Bowser, Bowser never existed and was always King Boo, or Bowser was just revived or survived the final fall in Paper Mario, and we're digging way too deep. Luigi Matryoshka doll. There's an unused model in the files of Luigi's Mansion that resembles a Matryoshka doll. You know those things from Rise of the Guardians? But of Luigi. I'm guessing this was maybe going to be used as a map marker for where Luigi was in the Game Boy Horror, but there's no for sure answer of what this could have been used for. Luigi's canonically rank is rank D. The canon ending for Luigi's Mansion 1 is the D ending. While at the start of Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon, it shows Luigi's house and it's identical to the rank D endings in the first game. Not too much else for this entry, just Luigi for sure got the D rank. Daisy poster. Left over in the files of the game lies these 2 images of Daisy. Unfortunately, she never appeared in the game, or really any games, honestly, very underused character, but these are left over in the files, implying that they would have been in a painting, or there would have been some type of reference to Daisy in the game. Even though it's never clearly stated that Luigi and Daisy are a couple, I mean, come on, they obviously are. There's so many times throughout different Mario games that it's hinted at, and it's all but confirmed. So, it'd make sense for her to be in the game in some way. Also, if you couldn't tell, these files were just ripped from Mario Tennis for the N64 and put into Luigi's Mansion. I really wish anything was done with Daisy in this game, but it could have just been files that somehow made their way into the folder for Luigi's Mansion, and they might have just not ever noticed they were there. Spinning coin. When exploring Out of Bounds, you can find a spinning coin. This coin is active in every room, and it's believed it was the coin that was once used in the E3 2001 build coin counter, as it uses a rotating animation near identical to the 2001 builds. Also, in the game's internal coding, this coin serves as a base to control the behavior and attributes of all existing coins in Luigi's Mansion, although it features no collision and nothing happens when you interact with it. Logo being Pop Happiness font. The font used for Luigi's Mansion logo is called Pop Happiness. It's a really old font made back in 1997. Just kind of ironic that they used a Pop Happiness font for a Luigi's Mansion game. Obviously not meant to be super happy or cheerful. Beta lab music. The music for the lab was different in the beta. Not really anything to say about this entry, but I'll be using the music as backing for the next few entries. B Mario. B Mario is the name of this model. The model shares animations with one called Luigi.mdl. Luigi is a cut model of Luigi that looks near identical to what we got on final release. Well, there's a lot of animations that got cut for both of these characters, and it seems like Mario could share the same animations with Luigi. Like maybe initially in development they had planned for you to be able to play as Mario maybe? Kind of like what they did later on with Mario Galaxy, where if you 100%ed the game you could play as Luigi. There's no solid evidence of this really, but it'd make a lot of sense. Drive people to play the game more if Mario was playable. It'd just be a nice thing to 100% the game and be able to play as Mario. C Parmesan. In the beta for Luigi's Mansion, there's leftover files that reference a C Parmesan, and in the book Darkness is Their Cheese, there's a quote directly from this character, but we never see them in the game. Most people assume this is what the chef's ghost name was, and yeah, it makes sense. I can't imagine a C Parmesan would be anyone else but the chef ghost. E3 2001 GBH map, Game Boy Horror map. There's not a whole lot of footage of the beta that shows the Game Boy Horror's map, but the small bits we have do show it looked a bit different. Mainly just that it wasn't as colorful, and a lot of the rooms just wouldn't have been as color separated as they were in the final game. Shiver died in a fire. There's a theory that the ghost Shiver died by fire. After all these ghosts had to die in some way, and not many, if any, have been confirmed to die in a specific way, mainly just hints. And a lot of people believe that this one's was by fire, and it makes sense. Shiver immediately freaks out and gets super angry if his candle is lit. So this one's pretty straightforward. He probably died by fire. Luigi's Mansion Nintendo Power t-shirt. Now this one I was going to do an entry on, but I came across a really good, almost hour-long video on it by someone I really think deserves more subscribers, and I really liked their style. It was so in-depth that I didn't think I could really do it justice, that I got the person who made the video, Sean Bogue, to come on and do a little summary of their hour-long video on this Luigi's Mansion shirt. So without further ado, here's my first collaboration with another YouTuber, and this is Sean Bogue for the entry of Nintendo Power t-shirt.
Hey y'all, I'm Sean, and I'm in a video all about the most niche shirt in gaming history. The Luigi's Mansion glow-in-the-dark Nintendo Power promotional t-shirt was given out to fans for the newly released Luigi's Mansion game for the Nintendo GameCube back in 2001. After you signed up for a 12-month subscription of Nintendo Power for $19.99, of course. You would have to send a check to Nintendo of America along with either a slip from the original game box or from the Nintendo Power Player's Guide for Luigi's Mansion released alongside the game. Only one size was made, an adult large, and only a certain amount of these shirts were ever printed. Promotional t-shirts like this were made to sell the magazines back in the 90s and 2000s, and depending on the popularity, only a certain number of them were ever made. Over the years, the number of those shirts must have dwindled until only one had an online presence and quickly became a hot ticket item at an Instagram Live vintage video game apparel auction. While many other t-shirts of this time period have hundreds if not thousands of pictures, past purchases, and current listings online, the Luigi's Mansion glow-in-the-dark shirt only ever had one. Vintage apparel experts list the current price of this shirt at auction for over $1,000, making it one expensive shirt and one of the rarest collector's items in Nintendo's history.
Get Out of Here poster. On the original Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube, 2 occurrences of this Get Out of Here poster exist. The first one is in the projector room, where if Luigi attempts to suck up the projector screen with the poltergust, he'll be met with a stretched out and eerie poster that knocks him on his butt and hurts him. It says, "Get out of here," on a very stretched boo. The second occurrence of this image is in the second floor washroom, where a monsters poster can be found. If the player attempts to suck up said poster, it'll change into the Boo Losses poster. Yeah, that's a hard name to pronounce, but again, it's the stretched out boo saying "get out of here." Just a really out of nowhere jump scare. Shivers loves Melody. Shivers, the ghost who most likely died by fire as mentioned earlier, is in love, or at least has a crush, on Melody, another ghost in the mansion. This time it's not a theory about Shivers, he literally just says, "Ah, the beautiful Melody will not even give me the time of day. What must I do to win her? Passion? Yes, that's it. I'll show her how much I burn for her. My unbridled passion will scorch her soul." So, bit of a creep. And he wanders the halls all around here. Just overall kind of a weird situation when it comes to Melody. I don't think she even knows he exists because she never mentions him at all in any of her dialogue. First person mode. Initially, the beta of Luigi's Mansion had a first person mode, and this was going to be an optional way of playing the game, but like pretty much every other yellow entry in this video, any entry that relates to the beta or unused assets, it was cut. But that didn't stop modders from adding it back in. And even though it's a bit janky since, well, you're not used to it and the game was changed to be fully third person, so not everything fits with a perspective, but it plays way better than you'd think and it's way more scary. How Mario was captured. The start of Luigi's Mansion is that Luigi won a free mansion in a contest he didn't enter, and this was all set up by King Boo. It was a ruse to get Luigi to the mansion where King Boo and the other ghosts were hiding. But Mario got there first. And while we can't see exactly what happened around the mansion with Mario, we do find his belongings scattered around the place. Which, okay, makes sense. He probably tried getting through the mansion and just lost stuff along the way. But most of the places of these lost items are behind locked doors. So did King Boo have the place fully unlocked before? Was it maybe really nice looking initially? I mean, that's what they did in the third game. They lured them in with a nice looking place and then it turned creepy afterwards. We don't know, but it was for sure at least slightly different before Luigi's arrival. At least a lot easier to get around. Paintings of portrait ghosts before their death. Throughout the mansion, you can see paintings that resemble the portrait ghosts. Well, these are most likely the ghosts before death. It's just super cool to include something like this. Even though some of the paintings aren't too obvious on what ghosts they turned into, a lot of them you can make pretty solid connections between, and some of them are just extremely obvious. Egad's Ladder. At the start of Luigi's Mansion, you get to go to Egad's lab, but not really explore it at all. If you're using Action Replay though, you can climb this ladder off to the left. Once up there, it's just out of bounds darkness, and while I couldn't find any footage of what it looked like exactly, in Map 0, an earlier entry, when wandering through there, you can also climb those ladders, and this is what it looks like. In normal full release Luigi's Mansion, you can't climb any ladders, but it's still fully programmed into the game. Speedy spirits during the blackout. There's some speedy spirits, these blue ghosts that run or hide from you, that are only catchable during the blackout of the game. And there's a misconception about these and all the golden mice that appear during the blackout. A lot of people seem to think that there's a second try afterwards, but no. If you don't get these during the blackout, you're just fully locked from getting them. 24-hour time limit. It's, I guess, a myth or rumor that the timer in the beta version of Luigi's Mansion was going to be a 24-hour time limit to beat the game in. In reality, it was just for the demo time, but there's a chance that they may have intended to keep it. That maybe this timer would be a 24-hour timer that would be for the whole day the game would be set in, or at least be a thing in the Hidden Mansion mode. Either way, it would have been cool to see this feature come back in some way, but I don't think it would have been a 24-hour time limit. Tier 4. This one's a mix of 3 entries, but they all link together. It's assumed and well portrayed that King Boo was the one who sent the letter to Luigi, tricking him to come to the mansion, but some fans think differently. There's a theory that Egad is actually the mastermind behind the whole mansion incident, and there's a few things in the game that sort of point to this. First of all, people question why his lab is right outside the mansion, which, okay, it doesn't look like the biggest lab, not necessarily too hard to get set up in a few days, but the inside is really complex. But that can be overlooked. After all, he's Egad, he's super smart, he could have built something to get that there on a short notice. But something isn't right about his knowledge of the paintings. He knows a lot about what's going on and how the paintings work. which seems fine unless you've played Mario Sunshine. It was released a year after Luigi's Mansion, so the events are for sure after this game's, but in Sunshine, Bowser Jr. says he was given a magical paintbrush by a man in a white coat, and it has the EGAD logo on it. But why would he do it? Well, EGAD could be a stereotype mad scientist. He could be the one to actually send the letter and get help from King Boo for an experiment. After all, the ghosts in the mansion are relatively normal. Most of them aren't hostile at all. Like mentioned earlier, they are living pretty normal lives. They read books, wander the halls, have meals. Some just want to exercise. I mean, they're kinda innocent here. So the theory goes that EGAD is secretly a mad scientist who has caused the events of multiple Mario games, and in this one is running an experiment on Luigi. And while most likely he's just helping Luigi and set up his lab super quick, what was he doing in Sunshine? That's really weird that he gave the magic paintbrush to the bad guy. Beta assets in WarioWare Get It Together. In WarioWare Get It Together, released in 2021, there's a Luigi's Mansion minigame where you do a sort of short version of what you do in Luigi's Mansion, catching ghosts. Well, this minigame takes place in the first Luigi's Mansion game, and with this being released 20 years after that game, they wanted it to look higher quality. And before they optimized the game for performance on release of the GameCube version, some of the beta assets were way more detailed than the launch ones. So having these still in their files, they just used the assets from the Luigi's Mansion beta that no one had their hands on before, and now fans could rip them from WarioWare and use them in the beta restoration project. Just a totally unexpected thing for them to do, and it's shocking they still have the files from 20 years ago. Area 4 Darkness. Area 4, being the last area of Luigi's Mansion, they wanted to make it a lot more spooky, so when opening the door to Area 4, the blackout happens, making it so the only things you can see aside from your flashlight is the lit candles, or relying on lightning strikes to light up the rooms from the outside. And speaking of these lightning strikes, for some reason, lightning happens way more when Luigi is idle, when you're not actively using the controller. I imagine this is probably to help keep the atmosphere of the game if you have to quickly do something else, or just to scare you if you have to take a break from the game for a minute. Mario bringing spare clothes. When exploring the mansion, you'll come across some items left behind by Mario. Most of these are articles of clothing. Some fans have dug way too deep into this. He was probably just bringing some spare clothes for his trip. His hat was even in the laundry room when it was being washed. I don't think it's anything creepy like a lot of fan theories tend to point to with this. Beta Mansion being on the title screen. The mansion shown in the title screen for Luigi's Mansion isn't the one we actually explore. It's the one from the beta. The one in actual gameplay and cinematics is much wider and taller. It's just weird that they didn't decide to change this for release if they thought the betas was better. Boo Woods. The official name for the woods on the outside of the mansion is the Boo Woods, and originally they were most likely going to be explorable, or at least more of the woods than just a graveyard. When clipping out of bounds, there's collision almost everywhere except for this one specific spot, almost as if a cave or some other cutout part of the woods was meant to be explorable. Scrapped 2-player mode. Most things cut from the beta of this game aren't too easy to show off, but this one oddly still fully works with action replay. If you put in a code, it'll start up the scrapped 2-player mode of Luigi's Mansion, and it works perfectly. It automatically binds the second controller port on the GameCube to this new Luigi that appears. I don't know why it got scrapped before launch, considering it works so well, and with action replay, it's even in the final release. Maybe it was to make it scarier, maybe it's that it wouldn't make sense that there's two Luigis, like how they put in a Gooigi instead later on. Maybe Mario was originally intended to be the other character and they scrapped it to change the story. No one knows why this was cut, but it's weird that it still works so well. Miyamoto GameCube controller demo. There was a whole demo built for Space World that Miyamoto was showing off the different controls of the GameCube controller affecting the ghosts in Luigi's Mansion. This, alongside the other two Space World demos, are completely lost. Bogmire's Origins. After catching all of the Mr. Bones in the graveyard, if you walk up to this headstone, you can start the fight with the Bogmire. This ghost is very unique in that it was never living. It's, quote, a product of the mansion's fear and despair. He's not sure who to fear or what to despair these days. The Bogmire ghost was just created by King Boo and doesn't express really any emotions, which, yeah, it's a ghost. Sure, it doesn't express any, but the rest in the game very much do. The ghost design and backstory of being an artificial creation make it probably the most unique ghost in the game. Prototype GameCube image. An image of a GameCube prototype can be found left over in the files of Luigi's Mansion. It doesn't really look any different from what ended up being the final version of the GameCube, but it's weird that it's still in the game and it's super low resolution, 128 by 128 pixels. I don't know why they would have this in here. Maybe they were gonna show off the console it was on in the main menu. But yeah, there's no way of seeing this in-game. Luigi's Mansion was not planned for a Nintendo 64. Some fans seem to think that Luigi's Mansion was originally intended to be on the N64, and while in extremely early talks about making the game it was considered, it was never developed with the intention of it being on that console. The idea was scrapped super early on, and that's why it looks so good for one, and also works really well with a GameCube controller. Playing Luigi's Mansion with an N64 controller would have been awful. Beta room clear music. Originally, there was going to be a bit of music that played when you cleared a room. This was scrapped, but the music was still left over in the game's files, and it just sounds super creepy. Not rewarding at all. I'll play some of it for you here. Yeah, that wouldn't have been very good clear room music. Infinite Dust. The 3DS remake of Luigi's Mansion occasionally had some dust when running around the place, but the GameCube version was just insane. It was like every step you took, or even if you looked at the wall the wrong way, dust would just come flying out of it. I get the mansion's supposed to look old, but it's literally got infinite dust. How the boos were trapped. When you go into the storage room, tons of boos are freed as if they were trapped, and it's never stated that it was a planned ambush, but considering this whole building is made by King Boo, it for sure was. Sue P died in her sleep. The biography for the ghost Sue P is, what was meant to be a short nap seemed to have turned into an eternal rest for the sweet Sue P. So yeah, they just straight out tell us that this 7-year-old girl died in her sleep and became a ghost. Oddly dark for a Nintendo game. Luigi's Mansion vinyl. The process of making vinyls is super hard and it takes an extremely long time, so even when something is bootleg, it's super impressive if it works. Well, in 2020, a bootleg vinyl of the Luigi's Mansion soundtrack was sold, and aside from it looking amazing, being a transparent green, it also worked. It sold for $255, and from what I could find was one of a kind. Now there's some other fan-made ones of this that are cheaper, but they don't look nearly as cool as the lime green. Z crouch button. In the beta for Luigi's Mansion, the Z button was bound for crouching, a feature that didn't return in the final release of the game. Now the Z button is just used for checking the inventory and stats. And talking about the beta, ghost portraits in beta parlor. In the beta's parlor, there was different portraits up on the wall. What's strange though is some of these portraits feature characters that didn't get turned into ghosts like the rest. Specifically, the one with a top hat here on the right was never turned into a ghost, but may have been planned on turning into one in the future development of the game. It just never got finished. Real money. Throughout Luigi's Mansion, you collect money as a way to judge score at the end, but if the whole mansion is an illusion, how come at the end of the game, based on how much money you got, it changes what house Luigi gets? I guess not everything in the mansion is an illusion if Luigi gets to keep the money. Or King Boo just felt like letting him keep it. Boo and King Boo's secret cutscene. The original ending of Luigi's Mansion has you start the boss fight by opening this door when you're ready, having the key. But if you try and do it early, King Boo will be confused as to who you are, first thinking you're Mario, then realize you're Luigi and just blow you away alongside his other Boos, despite not being able to see them. Tier 5. Weird background noises and gallery music. The music for Luigi's Mansion is usually pretty spooky, except for the gallery. It's pretty cheerful compared to the rest of the game's soundtrack, but there's some weird stuff in the background of the music, like right here. It sounds like maybe some type of factory or scraping in the background, which doesn't make any sense for being in a gallery. Luigi with Poltergust in the 1,000-Year Door. This image was found of Luigi holding the Poltergust in the files of Paper Mario the 1,000-Year Door. Fans first thought this was a scrapped, never used sprite of Luigi, but it turns out that there's an extremely rare chance that in the audience, Luigi will be wearing the Poltergust. And most of the time it's hard to tell that he's even there, but yeah, he'll be wearing it. Harder to get F rank than A rank. When progressing through any Luigi's Mansion game, you'll naturally get tons of money, which usually means you'll at least get a D or C rating by default at the end of the game. But getting an F rank is just downright hard. You have to try to not get any gold, and it's pretty easy to get an A rank compared to this. You really just have to go out of your way to get no gold, and it's honestly pretty hard to get an F rank. Lightning in every room. When lightning strikes, it'll light up the whole room, which makes sense for most of the mansion with all the windows, but when you go down to the basement or a room without any windows, the lightning still lights up the entire room. They probably just didn't think about this, and it still helps the atmosphere if you're in the basement and the lightning goes off. You could pretty easily make up some sort of explanation in your head for it, like there's windows in the basement just leading outside. They probably just didn't think about this in making the game. The manual having a screenshot from the Japanese version. When making the manual for the English version of Luigi's Mansion, they got all the screenshots from the English version of the game, but forgot to change one that they just carried over from the Japanese manual. So the manual still works and the image in context makes sense, just the Japanese text on the image for an English guide really stands out. Unused fear states. There's still some leftover fear states in the files of the game that Luigi never used, and they look pretty good too, aside from some clipping. But yeah, the animations are still in the files, they just never got applied to Luigi. Unused mission mode. There's text in the Luigi's Mansion files that reads Koga mission mode, followed by various pieces of code that set up the main game after a file is selected on the file select screen. So this means they were most likely planning on having a mission mode like what they did in Dark Moon, but it never got finished. Picking up an item while EGAD is calling you glitch. When you catch a boo, EGAD will normally call you right away, asking if you want to save your game. To avoid this, as soon as you catch a boo, if you start vacuuming a cloth of some kind, it'll skip the text pop-up. This is used a lot in Luigi's Mansion speedrunning, and if you're interested in videos on speedrunning, I think they're super interesting how different games are done. I'd love to make one. Just let me know if you're interested in the comments. N64 Mario painting. The painting of Mario, where he's trapped, actually uses a render of him from Mario 64. When he's out of the painting and saved, it's a newer model. It's just weird they didn't use this one for the painting. Maybe it's just more iconic and in people's heads the N64 version. Was he a dream too? EGAD says this while telling Luigi he saw a similar looking guy go into the mansion, which he also believed could be a dream. The line just sticks out as being a bit eerie, and would also be super creepy and complete story changing if somehow Mario was another one of King Boo's illusions. Luckily, this isn't the case. Vincent van Gogh also created the ghost rats and bats. There's a theory that Vincent van Gogh is the one that made all the ghost rats and bats alongside all the other paintings that came to life. And it makes sense. After all, he did make most of the ghosts in the game. It's honestly just kind of weird they aren't listed as being created by him. It would make a lot of sense. Nintendo Power Luigi's Mansion render. Between Space World 2000 and 2001, there was a build of Luigi's Mansion that only Nintendo Power showed off. This build was much closer to what the final release of the game looked like, and I went ahead and put all the images here if you want to look at them. But yeah, it's extremely similar to Space World 2001 and was the biggest difference between builds at the time. Comparing Space World 2000 to this version of the mansion, they're extremely different. Luigi supports animal rights. This entry is referring to when Luigi examines the rug in the safari room with the Game Boy Horror. When he examines it, he says, "How could anyone treat an animal that way? I won't stand for it." So yeah, he supports animals' rights to not become a rug. Spanish sentence in Italian version of the game. For some reason in the Italian version of Luigi's Mansion, some of the text is left in Spanish. I have no clue why they'd do that. Maybe they were going over the Spanish version and just forgot to make a line Italian. Also, the creator of this Iceberg said they used Google Translate and they weren't sure if it was accurate that it was Spanish. I know a guy who is. It is accurate, don't worry. But yeah, they just left this in the game and never bothered to fix it. The dust took 6 months to program. When programming the dust in Luigi's Mansion, they wanted it to be as realistic as possible. So making the dust apparently took 6 months to program. And it's not just a standard animation, so it makes sense it'd take a while. But I don't think anyone was expecting them to have a dust counter off of every single particle of dust you vacuum to affect which visual animation it plays. Skull on Mansion's front door. Short entry, but for some reason there's a skull on the front door, like a knocker. I'd say it was spooky enough. King Boo didn't need to scare Luigi before he was already in the mansion. Just kind of weird. Inaccessible blackout ghosts. Once a blackout happens, the sitting room and guest room both have ghosts in them, but when the blackout happens, you can't get into those rooms anymore. It was most likely planned that you could get in there, just odd that they were left over. Bouncy ball ghost was used for the Shooting the Moon minigame. This is the ball ghost, a cut enemy from the game. Or sorta cut. The model was used for the Shooting the Moon minigame, so even if we didn't get this little guy flying around the mansion like a normal ghost, you can still see him in the game. Ghost Poster and Darkness. Floating in the darkness outside of the storage room is a painting. Here, I'll brighten it for you. Yeah, it looks like a possibly scrapped portrait ghost. This was probably planned on becoming an enemy and just got cut. But if you directly rip the texture from the files and zoom in on it, it says family written in red on this portrait. Luigi's breathing. When Luigi's in the dark, you can clearly see his breathing. This means either the mansion is super cold or was just a design decision to show how scared he was and heavily breathing all the time. Probably the latter. Promo flashlight. This is an extremely rare promotional flashlight for Luigi's Mansion given to select invitees at the E3 2001 showcase of the game. The glass of this flashlight is patterned to cast a GameCube logo, and the red on-off switch keeps the light off while pressed, mimicking the B buttons function in the game. It's just a super unique collectible, and there's very few of these out there. Prototype sold on eBay. There was a prototype version of Luigi's Mansion sold on eBay a while back, and it only sold for $350. And while sure that is a lot for a Nintendo game like this, it is also a prototype. That's crazy. Unfortunately, the files of the disc were never put online as the person who bought it never came forward, but this was the last ever time this thing was shown online, just in some random listing. I really hope someday someone speaks out about it and dumps the files online. It really sucks knowing that this is out there and that we don't get to access it at all. Tier 6. Luigi's Mansion 3 took ideas from the beta and development of Luigi's Mansion. Luigi's Mansion 3 took some features from the development of the first game and made them work on release. Sure, Luigi was in the 3DS remake of the first game, which some fans believe means that the remake is in an alternate timeline. Sure, it sort of makes sense with it kind of being completely game-changing, but it's just a gameplay feature, it doesn't affect the story at all. But yeah, Luigi comes back as a major part of the third game, and while in the process of conceptualizing the first Luigi's Mansion, it was mentioned that it was going to be a massive apartment instead of normal house, and with 3's setting being a massive hotel, looking like an apartment building, a lot of fans believe the apartment building idea, and Luigi being the 2-player that was cut from the first game, that these were just ideas put into the third game, and it makes sense. Bouncing Poltergeist straps. At some point during designing the Poltergeist 3000, it was going to have straps on it, so it'd be attached to Luigi. Why these got removed? No one knows. Possibly to make the game run better, or the devs just thought it looked better without them. Either way, they're still in the game. When playing the opening cutscene, you can see the cut straps of the Poltergeist bouncing up and down way off at the edge of the map. What's weird is that this animation isn't tied to anything at all. It's just bouncing for no reason. And after the cinematic, they disappear. Also, the best way to see this, and the footage I'm using is from a YouTube series called Boundary Break, which I just wanted to mention because it's really good and is now considered an official documentary on Google. But yeah, it's just weird that this was left in the game, and it would have looked really good being on Luigi. Beta game over screen referenced in Smash trailer. When Luigi gets scared and falls to the ground in the Smash Ultimate trailer for Castlevania getting added, it may look a bit familiar. Probably because it's basically the game over screen from the beta of Luigi's Mansion. It's for sure at least inspired off of it. The white eyes and facial animation, it's very similar. Welcome to Acid Theater. Luigi's Mansion contains an unused sound file of a voice saying welcome to being cut off and distorted, and it turns out this is actually an edited version of a commercial sound sample called badacid.wav. And the voice is saying, welcome to Acid Theater. What this could have been used for, I have no clue. Some fans seem to think it could have been used in the telephone room, and it would make a lot of sense, just weird that it never made it in. The unicorn statue idea is from the Ocarina of Time beta. On the 3rd floor of the balcony of the mansion, unicorn statues can be found, and they feel really out of place. They don't really fit the theme of the mansion, and a lot of fans speculate that the idea of putting this in the game was directly from the beta of Ocarina of Time, where very similar looking statues can be found and were never used. Nintendo Power Luigi figure. In the early GameCube era, a company named Joyride did a lot of collaborations with Nintendo and other gaming companies to make figures off their characters. They had figures from Super Monkey Ball, Zelda, and Halo to Metroid, Mario, and Luigi's Mansion. These figures were decently popular, but the ones for Luigi's Mansion were a Nintendo Power exclusive, so nowadays trying to get your hands on one of these figures can be extremely hard. The listing on eBay I found for the Luigi's Mansion one is $800 plus shipping. Also, if you add on the Mario Sunshine figure, this goes up to $7,000. These two figures are some of the most rare merchandise for the games, and it's solely due to them being Nintendo Power exclusives. Beta Ghost concepts reused for the final game. Like mentioned earlier, the tomatoes the Chef Ghost would have used acted the same as the bowling balls did and sorta got turned into them. This feature from the beta and some others like the Sewer Ghost turning into the Spark Ghosts were just repurposes of ideas that never came to fruition with these other ghost concepts. And for the last theory entry, the beta will be dumped. I hope so. Speculating about what all was in the beta for Luigi's Mansion is kind of frustrating, considering there's all this footage and there's just no file of it. I genuinely think in another year or two, inevitably when another big Nintendo leak happens, hopefully we'll get the beta. I just hope. Also, it's not an entry on the Iceberg, but Game Theory did a video on how much the entire mansion is worth, and it's worth $1,315,000, $433.51. So yeah, it's a lot. But for the mansion, honestly, that's kind of cheap compared to nowadays prices for a mansion that big. Thank you so much to my YouTube members for the support, and thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and if you did, maybe like and subscribe. And once again, big shout out to Sean Bogue for the help on the t-shirt entry, and he just makes great videos. I highly recommend. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, week, month, and I'll see you in the next one.